So good morning. It's Christmas week. This is probably one of the most special weeks of the entire year. And of course, we got a great gift. Some of you would call it a gift. I think some of you would call it a curse, but we got snow. If you talk to me about it, my family kind of views snow is God's love. If you talk to a couple other people, not so much. So anyway, I hope you're able to enjoy this week. It's an incredible week. Now, if you stop and think about it, just look at the big picture. God entering earth in the form of a baby, we call it Christmas, is still impacting the world today. There's just something spectacular about this week. Some people, they just want to be more generous and they're more kind. If you walk through the day, it's just refreshing. There seems to be a joy. People want to help out. People want to serve. There's just a different vibe this week than any other week. And you might ask yourself, what's that all about? Well, I would tell you, I think God entering earth in the form of a baby, it's still impacting people over 2,000 years later. It is the most remarkable time period, and I hope you're able to jump into this week. I hope you're able to relax, enjoy it, and just be with family. I just hope, really, we pray that you'll have a real special time. So with all this excitement and joy around Christmas, you might find it odd that Sam and I are talking about fear. Why would we talk about fear around Christmas? Well, Sam said it really well last week. You know, this year has given us a lot of challenges to overcome, and a lot of us are still swirling in these challenges. And quite frankly, 2021, we don't know what's coming. And so I think it's really appropriate to talk about fear because, you know, if we don't overcome fear, it can really mess with our lives. So Sam and I wanted to look at the Christmas story. We wanted to look at all the different characters and the fear they experienced as God was entering earth and how they overcame that fear. And to start off, I'm going to start with this verse and I'm going to end with this verse. And it's right from Jesus. I want you to hear it. It's an awesome verse. It's in John 14:27. These are the words of Jesus. I'm leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give you, and the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. What beautiful words from Jesus. And it's kind of the foundation verse for our whole series. So we started this talk and we started looking at the fear that Mary would have faced. Now, after Gabriel, the archangel, meets with Mary and drops some stunning news. Hey, Mary, you're pregnant and it's the Son of God, right? Mary begins to have that sense of fear, which is, I'm not sure I'm enough. You can hear it in her reply back to Gabriel when she says, how can this be? Like, I don't know how this is going to happen. I'm poor. We're not royalty. How are we going to give birth to a king? Joseph and I haven't been together, so how am I pregnant? Like, you can begin to feel the weight on this young girl when she realizes, I don't know if I'm enough, right? And we stopped and we asked you, what are you facing in life that makes you feel like you're not enough? You don't know if you're enough to be able to walk through what you have to walk through. What is it for you? Whatever it is, we looked at the story of Mary and this young 12, 13-year-old girl fully surrendered her life. And so whatever it is that you and I are facing, we kind of stopped and asked you, have you fully surrendered your life to God? That story about Mary is just incredible. Last week, Sam spoke about Joseph. And a matter of fact, one of the things that Sam brought out that I so appreciated, no one brought Joseph up to speed. There was no angel visit for Joseph. He had to hear it right from his pregnant fiance. Hey, Joseph, I'm pregnant, and God did it. Yeah, right, Mary. That's how it always happens. I mean, think about what Joseph had to walk through. So number one, he had to walk through the potential betrayal, those feelings that really hit to the core of a man that Sam brought out. He has to walk through the reality that maybe she betrayed him. And then to believe her and walk through and get married with her means he has to walk through a scandal now. So if you really think from Joseph's point of view, this really wasn't a great moment for Joseph, right? One of my favorite parts about what Sam brought out last week was that this wasn't a one-time event for Joseph. This was a 4-time event for Joseph. Do you remember how Sam brought this out? Hey, Joseph, I want you to marry Mary, right? And it's okay because God did it. He had a dream and God came and shared that with him. That's huge. And then later, after Jesus was born, hey, Joseph, I want you to go to Egypt. Just pick up your wife and kids and just go to Egypt. I'll take care of you there because Herod's coming to kill you. And then after he's in Egypt, hey, Joseph, I want you to go back to your homeland now. And then once he's in Israel, hey, Joseph, I need you to move to Nazareth now. These are huge moments where Joseph had to deal with a lot of fear. And quite frankly, wouldn't you have a lot of follow-up questions with God? And one of the things that Sam brought out was how Joseph overcame his fear simply by obeying God. It's an incredible story. I don't know if you're taking the time to read this at home, but you'll find these stories in Matthew 1 and 2 and Luke 1 and 2. Like, read these stories, enter these stories, because these characters, more than characters, Mary and Joseph and people around the story, they had to deal with so much uncertainty. So today we're going to talk about the shepherds, and what I want to do is I just want to jump into Luke 2, and we're going to start reading. We're going to read a big chunk. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Cornelius was governor of Syria, and everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up to the town of Nazareth in Galilee, to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. So he went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in clothes and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for him. There were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in clothes and lying in a manger." Suddenly, a great company of heavenly hosts appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those whom his favor rests." While the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. The shepherds were terrified, and they had very good reason to be terrified. So what I want to do is ask you this question, because to me, this is what's interesting. Have you ever thought about who heaven announces the birth of Jesus to? Like, it's so interesting who heaven decides to tell that Jesus, the Messiah, is born. Heaven decides to go to shepherds who are maybe a couple miles out of town. And I need to ask you this question, like, to you, what's your mental picture of the shepherds? Because probably chances are some of you at home, you have like a wooden nativity scene, really cute. It's by the front door maybe, or by the fireplace. It's a nativity scene. You have all the characters, and you have to have a couple shepherds with the staff and the sheep, and it just makes the nativity scene really, really cute, right? For some of you, maybe you've seen Christmas cards, and on the Christmas cards, it's just the most perfect nativity scene, right? And the idea of the shepherds being there, we just kind of accept. And if someone reads to you Luke 2 and you say, well, the angel showed up to shepherds, you think to yourself, I've heard the story before, it's kind of cute, and I guess that's what happened, and we just kind of move on. What is your mental picture of the shepherds? Probably just kind of cute add-ons to the nativity scene. Well, we need to talk a little bit about the shepherds in Jesus' day. And here's what the people who study this is what they tell us. The shepherds of the day didn't have the greatest reputation. I don't know if you know this or not. The shepherds were they were actually very unreliable. So much so that they were not allowed to give testimony in a court of law. So they're absolutely unreliable. So if you have a court case and someone says, hey, my defense is the shepherds, and they're like, we don't, they're so unreliable, we're not even going to take their testimony. That kind of identifies who the shepherds were in those days. They were thieves. It was known that they would spend months away from town. There's no boss, there's no manager, there's no HR person, kind of managing them. They would just take their sheep and they would just go to someone's field, allow the sheep to just kind of eat the produce and just kind of move to another field. They're thieves, right? So they're unreliable, they're thieves, and they're really dishonest. The word on the street back in the day was, if you're going to buy something from a shepherd, chances are it was stolen, right? So everyone knew, everyone who was anyone, they knew shepherds are outcasts. They're sinners, right? You just don't want to deal with them. Now, based on this new information that you may have never heard about shepherds before, please don't go home and grab the little wooden shepherds and throw them in the fire. Don't do this. There's a reason they're there, and we're going to talk about it. The story's not over. But I want you to think about this. Why would heaven that night take the time with angelic angels and the glory of God? Why would they take the time to announce the birth of Jesus to shepherds? That seems odd now that we know what their reputation is, right? Why would they do that? Well, the shepherds are exactly who Jesus came to save. He came to save the outcasts. He came to save the sinners. And he came to save the folks who are pushed to the side. Heaven in this moment is sending the world a message. I have come to save you. And by the way, notice who heaven does not announce that night that Jesus is born. He did not come, the angels didn't show up to the religious elite who would have weighed and measured themselves, and they would have concluded, we're really good people. They're not. So let's get back to the story. Imagine being a shepherd. It's a peaceful night like every night. You've never been to New York City. You've never been to a July 4th celebration. So for you at night, it means night. You've never seen anything in the skies before. And finally, it's dark. It's time to chill out. And suddenly, all of heaven opens up and the sky is filled with angelic beings, and you're confronted with the glory of God. It's unexpected and it's terrifying. You have no context for this moment. You're not prepared for this moment. So why were the shepherds terrified? Well, they felt the fear of sudden and radical change from it being a peaceful night to being confronted with the glory of God. So let's just stop right here, and I have a question for you. Have you felt the fear of sudden change in your life? Like something happened quickly and it just panicked your heart. Maybe it's a job change. Maybe it's a health change. Maybe it's a financial change. Maybe it's a relationship change. Maybe something that happened that is just way out of your control. Something that it's out of your control and it wasn't even fair. Life did it to you. You had nothing to do with it. And because of this sudden change, maybe life now is forever different. You feel like you've lost control and fear just kind of grips your heart. What did the shepherds do the moment that they were confronted with this fear? I'm going to read it for you again. Let's go to Bethlehem and see the thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about. So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. What we see in the story is that the shepherds, they ran right to Jesus. When you experience fear, when you experience the fear of sudden change, the best thing that you can do is run to Jesus. Have you experienced sudden change? Something you certainly didn't expect, something you really weren't prepared for. It comes out of nowhere. Like I said, it was not even fair. What did you do? Did you run to Jesus? Because if you haven't, this fear of sudden change if we don't deal with it, it can create tremendous worry and stress. And if we don't deal with it with Jesus, I'm telling you, fear can grow and it gets worse. So what did you do? When you felt the fear, something in your life, a sudden change, what did you do? Did you run to friends on Facebook because you're just going to let them know what's going on? Maybe you wanted to complain a little bit. How did that work out for you? Chances are you felt better temporarily, but the problem is it didn't take care of the fear. It doesn't take care of your heart. Did you run to too much alcohol, or did you run to too much eating? Again, the problem is it just kind of covers over the issue. It gives you the ability to temporarily ignore it. It doesn't give you a chance to deal with the fear or the stuff in your heart. Did you kind of tap out in life? That means that you just kind of pulled away from the table, pulled away from relationships, pulled away from the community, any kind of commitments you had. You just go dark and you're by yourself. You don't want to talk to anybody. Again, it helps you ignore the problem briefly, but it doesn't take care of the fear. It doesn't take care of the condition of your heart. Just real fast, I didn't say that any of these things were wrong. For example, running to friends or food or, pulling away or, those things. I didn't say running to friends is wrong. What I am saying is that if you don't run to Jesus first, that fear can stay there and get worse, and the condition of your heart doesn't change, right? When we feel the fear of sudden change, we need to run to Jesus first. If we don't, that fear will continue to control us. That fear might panic us. It might stress us out. It can keep us up late at night because in our minds, we're thinking about the worst case scenario all the time. We think about what could go bad and what will go bad if those things go bad. Please hear me. If the fear doesn't get dealt with, it will grow. So what I wanted to do is really kind of talk about what does that look like? What does it look like to run to Jesus? And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back to the days of King David. King David ruled for about 40 years. And in his leadership as king, he had to deal with a ton of sudden change. His son Absalom wanted to rebel against him. His enemies around the country wanted to take him out. So David, as you're reading the David story as early as, David taking on Goliath, he's always dealing with sudden change. I want to read for you something right out of Psalms. It's chapter 33, verses 15 to 22. This is what David wrote. He said, "The Lord gazes down upon mankind from heaven where he lives. He has made their hearts and closely watches everything they do." We're going to go right now to verse 16. "The best equipped army cannot save a king. For great strength is not enough to save anyone. A war horse is poor risk for winning victories. It is strong, but it cannot save." Now, before I keep reading, do you find it odd that in verse 15, he's saying, hey, God made us and he watches over us, he loves us. And all of a sudden, verse 16, he switches to like army talk. He's like, it talks about war horses army. It's kind of like a weird transition. Let's keep reading. It's in verse 18. "But the eyes of the Lord are watching over those who fear him, who rely upon his steady love. He will keep them from death even in times of famine. We depend upon the Lord alone to save us. Only he can help us. He protects us like a shield. No wonder we are happy in the Lord, for we are trusting him. We trust his holy name. Yes, Lord, let your constant love surround us, for our hopes are in you alone." David is sharing something huge. He was the leader, he was the king for over 40 years. Every country around him wanted to take him out. His own son Absalom tried to rebel against him. And if you're the king of a country and you know you have so many enemies, where do you find your source of strength and security? Well, the obvious answer is you look to your army. You look to the strength of your war horses. How many war horses? How many chariots? How many people are in my army? Are they well fortified? Like, as a king, you look to your strength of the army and the security of the war horses, right? David looks over his experience as king for like 40 years and he says, no, don't do that. Don't look to the army as your source of strength and security. What you need to be doing is you need to be looking to God and God alone. And I think David understood this because he's the one who is the shepherd boy who took on the warrior Goliath. David didn't need an army to take on Goliath. He needed God and just a couple of smooth stones, right? What's the point? When you feel the fear of like sudden change, things are out of control, fear just kind of panics you, we run to Jesus first. The place where you're going to find strength and security is in Jesus. That feeling of fear and sudden change, you're probably going to naturally want to run to friends and Facebook and eating or tapping out. And those aren't good options because they don't take care of the fear, and ultimately they don't take care of your heart condition. And I think if David was here and we kind of had a question and answer time, like, hey, David, you did the Goliath thing and you experienced God and then you became king for 40 years. Like, kind of break it down for us. How would you lead? What's your advice for us as we go through life? And I think David would say, don't do it. Don't be people that kind of build your life and then look to the obvious thing like your army, obvious thing like a war horse for strength and security. Don't do it. Don't look at don't look at all the things that you think everybody else looks at for strength and security. Always, always, always focus on God. There's one thing that you should do in the worst moments of your life when you face fear, and it's always, always running to God for your strength and security. It doesn't matter how big your army is. It doesn't matter how tough your war horses are. I want to begin to close today, and I hope you remember the story of the shepherds. They were the outcasts. They were the sinners. They were the ones marginalized. They were pushed to the side. And when heaven announces the birth of Jesus in the most spectacular way, they were just terrified. And it's so interesting. Stop and remember that the very people who heaven wanted to announce the arrival of Jesus, it was the shepherds, right? And as heaven announces the birth, they're obviously terrified. What do? They run to Jesus. The quick and obvious answer for us, like in those moments when we feel fear, like what do? The quick and obvious answer would be we run to Jesus, obviously in prayer. These moments where even people who don't believe in God and something traumatic happens, they find themselves praying, right? So the quick and obvious answer is we run to Jesus in prayer. The less quick and less obvious answer is in the way we live. We put our trust in God, not in our armies, not in our war horses. For relief, we don't run to friends and Facebook and food and checking out first. What we do is we run to Jesus first. We live a life where we put our trust in Jesus. We don't look at what we have and what we don't have. We don't look at our 401ks, our insurance, our house, who we know, our education. We look to Jesus. I want to close with a verse that we started with. These are the words of Jesus. I'm leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is the gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. I want to conclude with this. That gift that Jesus is talking about can only be given to you when you run to Jesus first. It's a remarkable gift. When you run to all the other things, you're not going to get what only Jesus can give. So we encourage you this Christmas as you walk into this week. If you're feeling anything like fear or sudden change and feel fear from it, run to Jesus first, because this Christmas we want you to have that peace of mind and heart that Jesus promised. We hope you have an awesome, awesome Christmas week. We'll see you next week.